You're tuned in to Steve Megatron on Altered Geek.
Hello and welcome to Altered Geek. I'm your host, Steve Megatron Phillips, and in this episode of the podcast, I'm going to be discussing why nostalgia is so profitable, good and bad reboots / revivals, and some of the ones I'm looking forward to or disappointed by. So, I thought I would start this out with a little bit of a monologue opinion here, referring to the whole nostalgia and reboots and revivals, and we've seen our fair share of them coming back now, and I think a lot of it stemmed from the fact that Hollywood is running out of ideas, and they have these properties and these franchises that they already own that they don't really have to develop any more to the character base, that they can modify, that they can pretty easily put back together. And the thing about it is, nostalgia is profitable because it's tried and true. What kind of prompted this entire conversation is the fact that I follow a variety of geeky people online, and one in particular, at its Carly Woods, the cosplayer, says that, do you think that our generation is the generation of Netflix, and that they cater and remake shows targeted mostly towards us because we are the ones who were mostly binge watching them? And I think that that's somewhat true. I think that because it's a tried and true show or format, it just makes it easier for content companies like Netflix or Hulu or any of the cable companies to almost instantly pull the trigger on a revival or a reboot on those given series. And animation's been doing it for decades now, at least as far back as the 90s. I know that some shows have been coming back in different iterations since like the 60s and 70s. So for TV shows to start doing this, it's kind of that natural progression. Animation has kind of showed this as the new format as time goes on. You know, we've had, 4 Ninja Turtles programs now. We had the 87, we had the 2003, we had 2012, and now we've got the 2018 edition. So, yeah, we've got 4 Ninja Turtle series now, and that's just crazy. And each one changes aesthetically a little bit differently. It changes the personas a little bit differently, the voices a little bit differently. And they're still kind of keeping somewhat true to the original persona, but they're altering a lot of things and changing a lot of aspects to it. And that's kind of, I think, the key to a successful reboot. I think quite possibly one of the most successful reboots or revivals or continuations where it constantly reinvents itself is Power Rangers. You look at any of the Power Rangers franchise, and about every season or two, they change up their outfits, they change up their villains, they change up a lot of the aspects of the show, and it just gets more life breathing into it. It keeps it fresh, and whether you like or dislike a certain season or certain version of the Rangers, you always can know that there will be a new set coming down the pipe in like a year or two. And I think that's been the biggest continuation revival series we've gotten to date. I mean, yeah, you've had series that have just kind of kept going, but none that have kind of reinvented themselves consistently along the way. And we've had, the Ninja Turtles, we've had Transformers, we've had Batman, we've had various, X-Men or Avengers or Spider-Man or any of these comic book heroes or things that started in comic books and were later translated to animation that have gotten consistent revivals because the comics themselves do it. The source material does it all the time. But if you're looking at television, we really haven't had it all that much. Until recent. A few years ago, we had Girl Meets World, which was a continuation of Boy Meets World, which I think proved to be a successful model, and then Full House did it, Fuller House. And we've kind of we've kind of gone into this different universe now as far as at least the sitcoms. Shows like Star Trek, Doctor Who, and a few other sci-fi properties like that. Yes, they've reinvented themselves and had continuations and revivals. I don't really count those per se because they've been a staple of sci-fi culture since the 60s. So I think that those kind of stand on their own anyway. That's just how they've always been modeled. It's the fact that the new current TV landscape is kind of going this other direction now. So we have a new Star Trek on TV. We have a new Lost in Space revival, which is, like I said in the last episode, awesome. It's the fact that they reinvented it without too much of the reinvention of the wheel. You look at Reboot, the Guardian Code. I don't find that to be a plausible, very well written or thought out, either dialogue or story-wise, to be a very coherent series. And in all honesty, if you edit out all of the human aspects, other than the stuff where they're physically in the internet, and you keep the bits with the sorcerer where he's only talking to Megabyte, the series actually makes sense still without the rest of that baggage. And that's kind of part of that situation. But no, I mean, you look at it, we've got a new Murphy Brown coming, we've got a new Magnum PI coming, we've got Roseanne, which is being revived, or has already been revived. I think they're on episode 3 now. Which, by the way, that series is actually on point there. It's really good. I was not a huge fan of the original Roseanne, but that could have been my age. It obviously wasn't marketed towards me at the time. I was younger when it was on. So it looked very dated. It looked very meh. I didn't really care for it. Whereas now, it kind of resonates with me a little bit on certain levels. Almost the way that Last Man Standing did. Which, speaking of Last Man Standing, that actually may be getting a revival as well. Talking about it kind of reminds me of the fact that we've got not only that show possibly getting revived over at WGN, but we've got a new revival talks of a new Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We've got Nickelodeon rebooting Clarissa Explains It All with Melissa Joan Hart reprising her role as Clarissa. We've got That's So Raven that revived that show on Disney with whatever the new one is of that, with her daughter son taking the key front point on the Visions aspect. So you've got all these different cogs moving now on reboots, and it's kind of interesting to see that this is the way that television's going. I mean, we've even got a new Carmen Sandiego coming to Netflix with Gina Rodriguez playing Carmen Sandiego in that. And we've even got a new Sabrina the Teenage Witch coming to Netflix. And the series is apparently going to be done by Riverdale creator Roberto Aguirre Sacasa. Shared a photo of it on Twitter the other day of the new Sabrina and Harvey from the Netflix series. And it's going to be called The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. So, and it's a spin-off of Riverdale, so you'll probably see characters from Riverdale show up in that. I'm not exactly sure who's playing who. Like, Harvey almost looks like the brother of, like, Jughead or whatever on this series. The twin. But anyways... yeah, they either that or it's the other kid from Disney that was Austin from Austin and Alley or whatever. Anyways, regardless, they haven't said anything about Salem on that, but so I mean, nostalgia definitely plays a factor in films, in animation, in television. Films, I mean, we've constantly got reboots. We've had 3 Spider-Man now. We've had I can't even keep track of Batman now because we're gonna have another one with Matt Reeves. So I mean, we've gotten that'll be the sixth Batman. We've got 5 on film if you don't count Adam West. If you count Adam West, then it's 6. But still, like, there's constantly a reboot going on, or a revival of something from old. And I think that as long as our generation is kind of calling the shots on a lot of the media now, I think we're going to see a lot more of it. Especially when the older generation is going to be like, hey, this show did awesome back in the day. Let's bring it back. Because it'll still have some kind of a resonance with childhood and everything. I think they've even got another, Trading Spaces on TLC coming back with the original cast reprising after 10 years of not being on the air, which I remember watching that with my wife when we first had sat down and moved in together, and it was a lot of fun to watch. We've had crossovers, like Supernatural with Scooby-Doo. So we've had a crossover between that, and that was actually really entertaining because not only did it play back to the nostalgia, but the goofiness factor of some of the show that it allows itself to do. And then we've got comics, which actually pull in stuff from the media. So you get the Jason David Frank suiting up as Lord Draken in the live-action trailer for the Power Rangers Shattered Grid crossover storyline in the Boom Studios Power Rangers comic books. So there's all kinds of fun and nostalgia. We've even got Jay and Silent Bob coming up on an episode of The Flash that Kevin Smith directed. I don't know if they're going to actually be playing the characters, but they're suited up like the characters. So it's going to be kind of entertaining to see that regardless of what happens. So, I mean, I think that the landscape has definitely shifted from a lot of... we've shifted from original, like, the 90s were pretty much sitcom and animation. And then the late 90s and early 2000s through the early 2010s... the teens of this century, we were in a lot of reality shows. And now reality shows are starting to tank and starting to go by the wayside. And so what are they doing to revive television ratings but bring back the 90s sitcoms and the 90s type of media? We've got a new Animaniacs coming to Netflix, or not Netflix, Hulu in, I believe, next year. And it's going to be done by Spielberg again. It's going to have probably some of the original voice cast, if not all. Who knows what the aesthetic's going to be. But regardless, we're in the age of the reboot. And there'll either be some good reboots or there'll be some bad reboots. Now, I think an interesting thing to talk about, aside from the fact that, yes, they're rebooting films too, and things like Men in Black, where it's going to have like Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth, reportedly. And a reprisal with Bill and Ted 3. There's promotional images going around the internet right now of that, where they're in a phone booth, and Ed Solomon, one of the guys that worked on the Bill and Ted movies, had a promotional photo online the other day. And then Indiana Jones 5 will be Harrison Ford's last. Obviously, he's in his 70s, still running around like he's not. But Spielberg's kind of joking that with it being his final time playing the role, that they should essentially have Indy take a different form. And he says we'd have to, he talked about if a woman were to lead the franchise, changing the name from Jones to Joan, and which makes no sense because Indiana Jones, I equate the last name to being the last name, so why would you change that? He says there'd be nothing wrong with it, but that it will certainly continue after this film. I think it'd be fine if they passed the torch on it, but they tried that in the last one with Shia, and it sucked. I'm not saying that it would suck with a female in there, that's not what I'm getting at, but I'm saying that I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, and I think that film is just poorly written. But if they're going to go that route, I don't think that they should have to like change Indiana Jones himself. I think they should just create like a daughter for him or something, or like a long lost daughter that kind of comes along the way that he meets, or knows about or something. I don't know. I don't think that it's right to change the character's original origin and turn them into something they're not. When it comes to any film or television series, that would be like making Roseanne a dude. Like, would you want Roseanne as a dude? No, not really. Like, it's the same mentality applies, because technically, if you want to be really technical about it, Tomb Raider is technically the Indiana Jones with a female lead. It really is. So moving on to something that's not so like heated and crazy, what would be some reboots or revivals that you would want to see happen? Now, for instance, we've gotten all different kinds of series over the last 100 years of almost 100 years of television. We're getting close. I would love to see a Gargoyles reboot, or a Mighty Max, or War Planets, because those were 3 series I really enjoyed as a kid. I forgot to mention we even had a DuckTales revival, and Dragon Ball Super. Well, actually, DuckTales was a reboot, but still, there's plenty to go back and redo from the 80s and the 90s, or even some of the early 2000s stuff, and give it a new look and new feel. But there's always this instance that you have to be careful when you're modifying the original source material, and point in case, I leave it to reboot the Guardian Code, and I have to point to that because when you look at that series, it's nothing like the original. They're trying to appease people. It's like they just slapped the reboot name on it and some of the reboot graphics, just because they own the property already, and tried to completely. It's basically nothing like Reboot, except for a cameo episode, and so like I feel like they didn't really know what they were doing in that aspect. Whereas you look at series, again, like Power Rangers and some of these other ones, or Ninja Turtles especially, because a lot of the graphics have jarringly changed. Same with Transformers. We got Transformers, we got Beast Wars, we got Beast Machines, we got Robots in Disguise, Armada, Energon, Cybertron, Animated, Prime, Robots in Disguise, and then whatever else, then you've got the Combiner Wars stuff. So, I mean, every series has a different set of aesthetics and different style to it. But essentially, all the characters are still their core purposed selves. A lot of the core of the show is still the same. That's what I mean by, if you're going to reboot it and redo the entire design of the show, either A, create something new, or keep true to some of the aspects of the original stuff. And that's kind of where I see where things can kind of go good or bad in the reboot revival world. So I don't know what you guys think on this. I think it's kind of an interesting concept to kind of play around with series that you'd like to see revive. I think it's time that Babylon 5 came back. I wasn't a huge fan of the original series, but I think that it definitely had some merit. And it could have lived up to the greatness of Star Trek in some degree. Plus you had Walter Koenig playing a different character on that, and that was the first time that I realized that he didn't have a Russian accent, because I saw him on the head and he didn't have it, and I was like, oh, so that's just an entire act the entire time. I thought he actually had the accent, just like Scotty. I thought he had the accent for the longest time until I saw him in a movie later on in the 90s, and I was like, oh, he doesn't have it. It's an act. And then I started kind of realizing more that you can do an accent. When I was a kid, and so I thought it was just kind of interesting to kind of notice those things. But anyways, I would love to see a revival of like Babylon 5. I think we've seen a revival of V before, which would be kind of cool to see again. I don't know. There's a lot of sci-fi properties that I could see coming back. I can't wait for Star Wars to have its own television series, which I know is in the works. Just because it'll be able to kind of add to the same pool of writing and greatness that sci-fi has gotten, not only back in the 90s, but we've gotten it now. It's kind of the revival of that with the Orville and Lost in Space and Discovery and things like that. I will be talking about Discovery Season 2 and the CBS-Viacom merger in Future Imperfect next week. So stay tuned for that. It may come out late in the week just because Birdman Dodd and I have to schedule a time together to record it. But that was the plan this week. It just didn't line up. There was a lot of stuff going on scheduling-wise. So I think that about rounds it out for this episode. I'm really interested to see what series you guys would like to see return and why. I really can't think of anything else off the top of my head because a lot of the stuff that I watched, I really don't mind if it comes back or not. I am happy with the nostalgia that I have, but I realize that it is that age of reboots and revivals and nostalgia kind of coming back to visit us. Whether it's by testing it out through mass binging of the original series on a streaming service like Netflix or Hulu, or if it's just them kind of just looking at how well the original series did and then bringing it back. I wouldn't be opposed to like a Home Improvement revival. I wouldn't be opposed to like a Step by Step revival or Family Matters or some of those things, which I think we could see some of that come into play on Fuller House, just because a lot of those were all produced by the same companies anyway, way back in the 90s. So I think that we're in for an entertaining last few years of this decade as far as television is concerned and film. But I look forward to seeing how the spectrum is going to change when we get into the 20s of this century. It's kind of wild when you sit and think about it, how things, the more they change, the more they stay the same. The seeds of the future lie buried in the past. It's everything's relative. Everything comes back. So history repeats itself, as it were. So until next time, get altered, get geeky with the Altered Geeks.